The last thing my mother said to me on Christmas Eve was, "Apologize to your sister right now, or don't ever come back." Nobody at that table defended me. Not my uncles, not my aunts, not my cousin Tara who had hugged me at the door, and not my mother who had been living under the roof I had helped keep over her head for almost 2 years. My name is Dana Mercer. I was 42 that Christmas, an Army logistics officer stationed near Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I had just come back from 8 months overseas, and all I wanted was one quiet holiday with people who knew me before rank deployments, and the knee brace I pretended didn't bother me in cold weather. Mom's house sat outside Columbus, Ohio. I brought her a blue scarf and a tin of Danish butter cookies from Kroger because my dad used to hide those in the garage every Christmas. Inside the house smelled like glazed ham, green bean casserole, and cinnamon candles. The tree stood in the corner with the same old angel. Then I saw the fireplace. There were stockings hanging across the mantel. Mom's, Melissa's, Uncle Ray's, Aunt Diane's, even one for Tara's new boyfriend. Mine wasn't there. My younger sister Melissa came out of the kitchen with a glass of wine and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Well, look who remembered where Ohio is," she said. I let it pass. "Merry Christmas to you too," I said. She looked at my boots. "Still dressing like you're on base." "They're comfortable. So are sweatpants. Doesn't mean you wear them to Christmas dinner." Mom stepped in. She looked thinner than I remembered. I hugged her and she patted my back twice. "You made it," she said. I said I would. "Yes, well," she glanced toward Melissa. "We weren't sure with your schedule." That was how it started. Little things. My old bedroom was full of Melissa's storage bins. My officer training photo was missing from the hallway. The gift I brought Mom was set on a side chair. Dinner was served at 6:30. Ham, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, Bob Evans rolls, and cranberry salad nobody liked, but everybody pretended to eat. For 20 minutes things were almost normal. Then Melissa started. "So Donna," she said, "are you staying long this time, or just dropping in for the applause? I'm here through the weekend." "How generous," Melissa Mom said, but not in a warning way. Melissa smiled. "Some of us have been here, handling things. Mom's appointments, the house, all the boring real-life stuff." "I know you've helped, Mom," I said. She gave a small laugh. "Do you?" There it was. That tone. The one that said she had already built the stage. "I call Mom every week, I check in. Phone calls are easy." Melissa leaned back. "You know what isn't easy, being the daughter who actually shows up." I kept my voice steady. "I've shown up in ways you don't know about." Her eyes flicked toward me, quick, satisfied. "Oh, you mean the mortgage?" The room froze. Mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Melissa tilted her head. "Sorry. Was that supposed to be a secret?" For almost 2 years I had been sending money straight to the mortgage company after Mom fell behind. She had cried the day she told me, said she didn't want anyone knowing. So I kept quiet. I worked extra assignments, skipped vacations, drove my old Toyota until the heater sounded like gravel in a blender. Melissa had found one notice months earlier. Now she had chosen Christmas dinner to use it. "I never held that over, Mom," I said. "I kept it private because she asked me to." Melissa gave a soft little clap. "There she is, Sergeant St. Dana." "I'm not a sergeant." "Oh, excuse me, Major Martyr then." Mom finally spoke. "Dana, don't start." I didn't. "You know how your sister is." That sentence, I had heard it my whole life, meaning I should swallow it, again. Melissa got braver. "You walk in here acting like we owe you a parade because you wore camouflage overseas." I stared at her. "No, Melissa. I know the difference between helping someone and using them." Mom pushed her chair back so hard it scraped the floor. "Enough. Apologize to your sister." "For what?" "For humiliating her. She brought up your mortgage at Christmas dinner. And you just had to correct her, didn't you?" I looked around the table. Aunt Diane folded her napkin. Uncle Ray reached for his water. Tara stared down at her plate. Nobody said a word. Mom's mouth tightened. "You have 2 choices," she said. "Apologize or leave." I waited, hoping one person would say, "Hold on, that's not fair." Nobody did. So I stood up. "All right," I said. I went upstairs to what used to be my room. My overnight bag sat beside an old exercise bike. I packed my sweatshirt, phone charger, and the book I knew I wouldn't read. My hands were shaking, but I moved slowly. When things get bad, do the next task. Before I came downstairs, I reached into the side pocket of my bag and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. I had hoped to talk to my mother after dinner. Just us, quietly. I wanted to give her one last chance to stop pretending she didn't see Melissa, but that chance had passed. Everyone was still at the table when I came down. Melissa wouldn't look at me. Mom did, but only long enough to make sure I was really leaving. I walked to the tree and slid the envelope behind the wrapped gifts under a box with Melissa's name on it. "What's that?" Mom asked. "Something you should have seen a long time ago." Then I picked up my coat. The cold hit my face when I opened the front door. Behind me, nobody moved. Nobody said, "Drive safe." Nobody said, "Dana, wait." So I stepped out onto the snowy porch, pulled the door shut behind me, and walked to my car. I didn't know whether they would open the envelope that night. But I knew once they did, nobody in that house would be smiling for long. I drove south on Interstate 71 with both hands locked on the steering wheel so tightly my fingers started cramping somewhere outside Wilmington. Snow flurries drifted across the highway in uneven streaks. Nothing heavy, just enough to make the roads shine under the headlights. I should have kept driving back toward Kentucky. Instead, around 9:30, I pulled into a Hampton Inn near Cincinnati because I realized I had missed the last 3 exits without remembering any of them. That's the thing nobody tells you about family fights when you get older. You don't feel dramatic afterward. You feel tired, like somebody reached into your chest and unplugged something. The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and chlorine from the indoor pool. A teenage kid behind the front desk wore a Santa hat and looked half asleep. "Traveling for the holidays?" he asked. "Something like that." He gave me a room key without asking questions. God bless that kid for it. My room was on the 3rd floor facing the parking lot. Beige curtains, generic landscape paintings, one of those heating units under the window that clicks every few minutes like it's trying not to die. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my coat. Then my phone started buzzing. Missed calls. Mom. Melissa. Mom again. Melissa again. Tara. Unknown number. Voicemails piling up one after another. I stared at the screen for almost a minute before finally listening to the first one. Dana called me back immediately. Mom sounded angry, not worried. The next voicemail was Melissa. "Well, congratulations, Dana. You finally got your big moment." Delete. Another one from Mom. "You had no right to embarrass this family on Christmas Eve." I laughed at that. Not because it was funny, because sometimes your body reacts before your brain catches up. Embarrass the family. Not forge a signature. Not use my military photo to collect donations. Not lie for years. No, the embarrassing part was me finally putting evidence in front of people. I tossed the phone beside me and leaned back against the headboard. Outside headlights slid across the parking lot snow. Inside the room, a TV commercial played somewhere through the wall. I could hear canned laughter from another room down the hallway. Normal people were opening presents and eating pie. I was sitting in a Hampton Inn trying not to cry over a missing Christmas stocking. Funny what finally breaks you. Not deployment. Not 20 years in the Army. Not sleeping in desert heat with mortar alarms going off twice a week. A missing stocking. I finally stood up and peeled off my boots. My knee cracked loud enough to hear. "Getting old Mercer," I muttered to myself. I turned on the TV for noise more than entertainment. Some Christmas movie was playing. A woman in a red sweater was falling in love with a guy who owned a tree farm. Of course she was. I checked my phone again. 14 missed calls now. Not one text asking if I got somewhere safely. That part stayed with me. I reached for the Bible-sized envelope folder in my bag and pulled out the extra copies I had made 2 days earlier on base. Part of me had known Christmas dinner might go sideways. I just hadn't expected it to happen that fast. The first document was the mortgage payment history. $27,000 over 22 months. Every payment directly from my account to the lender. I remembered the day Mom called crying because she had fallen behind after some medical bills and credit card debt piled up. She kept saying she didn't want to lose the house Dad bought back in 1989. "I'll figure something out," I had told her. And I did. Quietly. The second document was worse. A personal loan application from 6 months earlier. Melissa had signed my name as co-guarantor. Not electronically, by hand. A sloppy version of my signature that would fool somebody skimming paperwork, but not anybody who knew me. When I first saw it, I actually sat there wondering if maybe there had been some misunderstanding. That's how deep family denial goes sometimes. You'll look straight at proof and still search for innocent explanations. Then came the screenshots. Melissa had started a Facebook fundraiser called Helping Military Families Through Hard Times. My photo was attached to it. Not a stock image. My actual Army portrait. There was even a line that read, "My sister Dana has sacrificed so much for this country." That part almost impressed me. Melissa always knew exactly how to package pity. People from church donated. Old neighbors donated. One of Mom's bridge club friends donated $200. Some of the money went into a separate checking account Melissa used for shopping restaurants and salon appointments. Nothing massive, nothing movie-level criminal. Just ugly little thefts hidden behind sympathy. That was the part outsiders never understood about people like Melissa. They rarely rob banks. They rob trust. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Tara. I almost ignored it, but something told me not to. "Hey," I answered. There was noise in the background, sounded like someone loading a dishwasher. "Donna." "Yeah." A pause. "Things are bad here." I looked out at the parking lot, I figured. "No, I mean really bad. Aunt Diane's crying. Uncle Ray left early. Your mom and Melissa are screaming at each other." That surprised me. Mom's yelling at Melissa. About the fundraiser thing. I closed my eyes. "So they opened the envelope." "Yeah." Another pause. Then Tara lowered her voice. "Dana." "Is all that stuff true?" "Yes." "Oh my God." I heard her sit down somewhere. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I know. I thought Melissa was exaggerating. I didn't know she used your picture." Neither did I at first. I found the fundraiser by accident after a woman from Mom's church thanked me online for all the brave work my family foundation was doing. Family foundation? I almost laughed when I read that. "Tara," I said carefully, "did Mom say anything?" "She keeps saying you should have handled this privately." I let out a slow breath. Privately? The family's favorite word. Meaning keep the peace, protect appearances, let Dana absorb it quietly. Then Tara said something strange. "Melissa's panicking about the Tennessee property." I frowned. "What property?" Silence. "You don't know." "Know what?" "Oh boy." I sat forward. "Tara, she found out the land your dad left might be worth a lot more now. There's some development going in outside Knoxville. Melissa's been talking about it for weeks." A cold feeling moved through my stomach. Dad's land. 8 acres outside Knoxville that nobody cared about for years. Dad had made me executor before he died because, in his words, "You're the only one who reads paperwork before signing it." At the time, Melissa rolled her eyes and called me Daddy's little officer. Now suddenly the land mattered. And suddenly my sister wanted me painted as the villain. I rubbed my forehead slowly. "Tara, how long has Melissa known?" "Since Thanksgiving, I think." Everything started clicking into place so fast it made me nauseous. The comments. The tension. The sudden attacks. Christmas dinner hadn't exploded by accident. Melissa had been setting the stage. After we hung up, I sat there staring at the muted TV while fake snow fell on screen. Then my phone buzzed one more time. A voicemail from Mom. I almost deleted it. Instead, I listened. "Dana," she said, voice shaky now, "what did you do to your sister?" I played it twice. Not what did Melissa do? Not are you okay? What did you do to your sister? I turned off my phone after that. And for the first time since leaving the house, I understood something that hurt worse than the fight itself. My mother didn't fear what Melissa had become. She feared what would happen now that I had stopped protecting her from it. The next morning I woke up at 6:13 to the sound of a snowplow scraping the parking lot outside my hotel window. For a second I forgot where I was. Then I saw the beige curtains, the half-empty cup of stale coffee on the nightstand, and my army duffel bag leaning against the heater. Right. Christmas. I lay there staring at the ceiling while the heating unit rattled like it had emphysema. My phone sat face down beside the lamp. I didn't want to look at it, which meant I eventually had to. There were 32 texts waiting for me. Some angry, some awkward, some pretending neutrality while obviously fishing for gossip. "Uncle Ray, call your mother." "Aunt Diane, I think this has gotten out of hand." "Unknown number. You should be ashamed ruining Christmas over money." That one actually made me laugh a little. Money. As if this had ever really been about money. Then there were the quieter messages. "Tara, I'm sorry. Aunt Ruth, call me when you're awake." And one from Melissa posted publicly overnight on Facebook. Naturally. She had uploaded a black and white selfie with mascara tears and a caption that read, "Some people wear a uniform and still don't understand loyalty." Over 100 reactions. Church friends, old classmates, people who probably thought military family betrayal sounded dramatic enough to comment on while eating cinnamon rolls. But then I saw something else. A comment from Tara. "Is this before or after you borrowed money from Grandma for your fake surgery?" I nearly spit out my coffee. The comment was already deleted, but not before 3 people had replied with question marks. I leaned back in the chair and rubbed my eyes. For the first time in almost 24 hours, something close to satisfaction flickered through me. Not joy. Just relief that maybe finally Melissa wasn't controlling every version of the story. My phone rang. "Aunt Ruth." I answered immediately. Well, she said looks like somebody finally kicked over the family garbage can. That was Ruth, 74 years old, smoked Virginia Slims until the late 90s, said exactly what she thought until people either laughed or left. Morning to you too, I said. You sleep. Not really. Honey, nobody sleeps after Mercer family Christmas fights. Your daddy once drove to a Waffle House at midnight after your mother threw a pie server at him. That caught me off guard enough to laugh. Mom threw a pie server. Missed him by a mile. Hit the dog food container instead. I could hear dishes clinking in the background. Then her tone softened. You okay? That question almost got me. Because it had been nearly a full day before somebody asked it. I don't know, I admitted. Well, that's at least honest. Ruth paused. Melissa's been pulling this kind of nonsense a long time, Dana. I stared out the hotel window at the slushy parking lot. What do you mean? I mean your sister learned young that helpless people get protected. I stayed quiet. She used to fake asthma attacks in middle school anytime she got caught lying. Ruth continued. Did your mother ever tell you that? No, course not. I leaned forward slowly. What else? Ruth sighed. After your daddy died, Melissa started borrowing money from people. Little amounts at first. Grocery money, gas money, emergency rent money. She told everybody I wouldn't help Mom. I know. That one hurt more than I expected. Because every month I had been sending money quietly while Melissa played caretaker in public. Classic Melissa. She always preferred witnesses over effort. Ruth kept talking. She'd cry, say she was overwhelmed, say family abandoned her. Half the time people gave her money just to stop feeling guilty. I thought about every holiday where Melissa somehow ended up being comforted after causing the problem herself. Every family argument that ended with, you know how sensitive Melissa is. Sensitive. That word had covered a lot of damage over the years. Your mother knows more than she admits, Ruth said carefully. I closed my eyes. I figured. But I don't think she understands how bad it got. That part I wasn't so sure about anymore. After we hung up, I took a shower and stood under the hot water longer than necessary. At some point I realized I was angry about things that had nothing to do with Christmas. The missing stocking. My old bedroom turned into storage. The fact that Mom introduced Melissa's casserole to relatives like it was some great accomplishment, while barely noticing I had crossed an ocean to get home. Tiny things become heavy after enough years. Around noon, my phone rang again. This time it was Captain Lewis from Base Legal. I sat down immediately. Mercer. Morning, Major. Sorry to bother you during leave. You're not bothering me. He cleared his throat. We reviewed the screenshots you sent. I waited. This fundraiser situation is messy but manageable if you document everything early. Am I in trouble? No, he said firmly. At this point, you appear to be the victim of unauthorized use. But I need you to avoid public arguments online. I almost laughed. You've clearly never met my family. That bad? Worse. He lowered his voice slightly. Look off the record, family fraud cases are ugly because people keep hoping emotions will fix what paperwork already proves. That line stuck with me. Paperwork already proves. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat there staring at the edge of the bed for a long time. Because despite everything, part of me still wanted Mom to call and say, I'm sorry, I should have listened. Come home. Instead, Melissa uploaded another Facebook post. This one was longer. Funny how some people disappear for years, then come back acting superior because they made a few payments nobody asked for. A few payments. $27,000. I clicked out before I could respond. That was the dangerous thing about people like Melissa. They dragged you into defending obvious reality until you sounded angry and unstable for stating facts. Around 3 in the afternoon, Tara called again. You busy? She asked. Not unless staring at motel wallpaper counts. She laughed quietly. Then her tone changed. I need to tell you something before Melissa twists it. I sat up straighter. Okay. She's been talking about Dad's land for weeks. The Tennessee property. Yeah. Tara lowered her voice. She found out developers are buying nearby lots. Somebody told her the value might be close to $900,000 now. I let out a slow breath. Dad bought that land decades ago because he wanted a cabin someday. Never happened. After he died, the property just sat there collecting weeds and tax bills. Now suddenly everybody cared. Melissa wanted Mom to pressure you into selling, Tara continued. But she knew you'd ask questions first. That made my stomach tighten. Questions first. That was always my crime in the family. I asked questions people didn't want asked. How long has she been planning this? I said quietly. I honestly think since Thanksgiving. I stood up and walked to the window. Cars rolled carefully through slush below. Normal lives, normal holidays. Meanwhile, my family had apparently been staging a character assassination because my sister wanted land money. Then Tara said something that stopped me cold. "Dana, Melissa told people you were unstable after deployment." I went completely still. She said what? "She told Aunt Diane you were angry all the time now, that people in the military changed you." For a moment I couldn't even speak. That wasn't random. That was strategy. Melissa was building a version of me nobody would trust if things turned ugly. And suddenly Christmas dinner looked different. The comments, the little jabs, the public confrontation. It wasn't spontaneous. It was preparation. I thanked Tara, hung up, and stood there staring out at the gray Ohio sky. Then I opened my duffel bag and pulled out the old metal file box Dad gave me years ago. Inside were land documents, tax records, and one folded piece of paper in Dad's handwriting. I had almost forgotten it was there. The note read, "Dana will handle things fairly. That's why I chose her." That was it. One sentence. I sat down slowly on the edge of the hotel bed, holding that paper in both hands. And for the first time since leaving Mom's house, I cried. Not loud, not dramatically, just quietly. Because somewhere along the line, my father had seen exactly who I was. And somewhere along the line, the rest of my family decided that made me convenient. By the third day after Christmas, I was running almost entirely on caffeine stubbornness, and whatever emotional damage keeps middle-aged daughters functioning long after they should have had a breakdown. I checked out of the Hampton Inn that morning and drove back toward Columbus because hiding in a hotel off Interstate 71 suddenly felt more pathetic than painful. The roads were wet but clear. Christmas decorations still hung from light poles in small towns along the highway, plastic reindeer, church signs about peace on earth. Meanwhile, my family was tearing itself apart over forged signatures and inherited land. America in a nutshell. I stopped outside a Kroger near Grove City to buy coffee and aspirin. My phone buzzed twice before I even reached the checkout. Melissa again. I ignored it. Then another call came through. Unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something told me to. Dana Mercer, a woman asked. Yes. My name is Carla Benton. Your Aunt Ruth asked me to call you. I leaned against my truck in the parking lot. She did. She said you might need a lawyer before your family turns this into amateur theater. I smiled despite myself. That definitely sounded like Ruth. Carla continued, I handle estate disputes, fraud claims, family financial cases. Your aunt gave me the short version. There's a short version. Apparently not. That was the first real laugh I'd had in days. Carla suggested meeting that afternoon at her office in downtown Columbus. I almost said no. Part of me still hated the idea of turning family pain into legal paperwork. But another part of me, the Army officer part, already understood something important. Melissa wasn't slowing down. So I drove north. Carla's office sat above an insurance agency in an older brick building near German Village. The waiting room smelled like coffee and old books. No fancy marble floors, no giant mahogany desk. Just practical. Like her. She was around 65 with silver hair cut short and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. You look exhausted, she said instead of hello. Been a weird Christmas. I gathered. She motioned me into her office. I handed over copies of the loan paperwork, fundraiser screenshots, mortgage records, and land documents. Carla spent 10 straight minutes reading without interrupting. That alone made me trust her more. Finally, she set the papers down. Well, she said calmly, your sister appears to be both reckless and extremely confident nobody would challenge her. That sounds about right. She tapped the forged signature. This alone is serious. I rubbed my forehead. I don't want her arrested. Good, because that's not the first step anyway. I looked up. Carla folded her hands together. Donna, I'm going to say something uncomfortable. Okay? Your family has been using your guilt like a spare key. That landed hard. Because she was right. Every time Melissa lied, manipulated borrowed money, or created chaos, the expectation was always the same. Dana will smooth it over. Dana will absorb the damage. Dana will be reasonable. And because I usually was reasonable, nobody ever examined the system itself. Carla leaned back in her chair. The strongest person in a dysfunctional family often gets punished for surviving better than everyone else. I stared at the paperwork spread across her desk. Funny thing is, I said quietly, I never even thought of myself as strong. You drove home from deployment and paid your mother's mortgage in silence for 2 years. She adjusted her glasses. That's not weakness. I didn't know what to say to that. Because praise always made me uncomfortable. Especially when it sounded true. For the next hour, Carla walked me through practical steps. Nothing dramatic, nothing revenge movie fantasy. Just smart, quiet moves. We would formally dispute the forged loan signature. We would request records tied to Melissa's fundraiser account. And most importantly, we would temporarily lock down any sale attempts involving Dad's Tennessee land until the estate paperwork was reviewed properly. People panic when money suddenly appears, Carla said, especially people who already believe life owes them compensation. That sounded painfully accurate. Before I left, Carla handed me her business card. One more thing, she said. What's that? Stop trying to save everybody from consequences. I sat there for a second, then nodded once. Outside, the sky had turned gray again, typical Ohio winter. Everything looked cold even before sunset. I had just climbed into my truck when my phone buzzed. Voicemail from Mom. I almost ignored it. Almost. Dana, she said softly, sounding tired now. Please stop this before it gets worse. Not Melissa should stop lying. Not, I'm sorry. Just stop this. I listened twice while snowflakes drifted against my windshield. Then another message came in seconds later. You know your sister can't handle pressure the way you can. There it was again. The family rule. Dana survives things. Melissa gets protected from things. I sat in that Kroger parking lot for almost half an hour with the engine off. At one point, I actually picked up my phone to call Carla and tell her to forget all of it. The paperwork, the legal notices, everything. Because despite all the anger, some ugly little part of me still wanted my mother to love me more than she loved avoiding conflict. That's the embarrassing truth nobody says out loud. Even at 42, some part of you is still 12 years old around your mother. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was a screenshot from Tara. Melissa had made another Facebook post. Some people would rather destroy their own family than let others heal. Underneath it were comments calling Melissa brave, strong, a survivor. One woman even wrote praying for protection against toxic relatives. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Melissa had forged my name, used my military photo for donations, lied to relatives for years, and somehow she was still auditioning for sainthood online. And people were buying it. That's when something inside me finally settled. Not rage. Clarity. I opened my messages and texted Carla. Keep going. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Good, she wrote back. The next day, things escalated fast. Formal notices went out regarding the forged loan paperwork. A request for fundraiser transaction records was filed, and relatives quietly began receiving copies of certain documents. Not all of them, just enough to stop Melissa from controlling the narrative. Predictably, she exploded. By Thursday morning, she was calling family members, claiming I was trying to steal Dad's land. By afternoon, she was telling people I had become paranoid after deployment. That one made my blood run cold. Because it wasn't random. Melissa understood exactly what she was doing. If she painted me as unstable early enough, people might question everything else later. Then came the church fundraiser. Mom's church hosted a New Year charity luncheon every winter. Small-town Ohio version of social warfare with casseroles. Apparently, Melissa showed up wearing cream-colored sweater sadness and telling people I had abandoned the family. Tara called me afterward, nearly laughing. You should have seen Aunt Ruth. What happened? Melissa started crying near the dessert table and saying nobody understood how much stress she was under. I leaned against my kitchen counter in the Airbnb Carla helped me find short-term. And Aunt Ruth looked right at her and said, Melissa, sit down before you sprain your conscience. I laughed so hard I almost dropped the phone. Please tell me somebody heard that. Half the church heard it. For a brief moment, things actually felt lighter. Then Tara's voice changed. Dana, there's something else. My stomach tightened immediately. What? Mrs. Harper across from your mom's house sent me security footage from Tuesday. Security footage? She saw Melissa going into your mom's house while your mom was at choir practice. I stood up straighter. And she left carrying a file folder. Silence filled the line between us. Dad's documents. Land records. Whatever Melissa thought might help her. Or hurt me. Then Tara added quietly, Your mom called everyone tonight. What do you mean, everyone? She wants a family meeting after New Year's. I closed my eyes. Why? She says we need to settle this as a family. That phrase alone told me exactly how ugly the meeting would become. Family meetings in the Mercer family were never about truth. They were about deciding who would be pressured into apologizing first. Before we hung up, Tara hesitated. Oh, and your mom said no lawyers. I laughed once, dry and humorless. Then I called Carla immediately. The moment she answered, I said my family wants a peace meeting. Carla didn't miss a beat. That means bring a lawyer. The family meeting got scheduled for January 6th at an Applebee's outside Columbus because apparently nothing says emotional collapse like fake wood paneling and unlimited mozzarella sticks. Mom picked the place. Neutral ground, she called it. That should have warned me right there. Neutral ground in my family usually meant Dana sit quietly while everybody explains why your pain is inconvenient. The morning of the meeting, Ohio skies looked the color of dirty dishwater. Wet snow lined the edges of parking lots in gray piles. I stood in the Airbnb bathroom staring at myself in the mirror longer than necessary. No uniform. That part mattered to me. I didn't want anyone saying later that I used the army to intimidate people, so I wore dark jeans, black boots, and a plain navy sweater. Simple. Calm. I tied my hair back then, untied it because it made me look too severe. Funny what your brain worries about before war. My phone buzzed. Mom, please, let's do this peacefully. I stared at the message for a few seconds before putting the phone face down on the sink. Peacefully. Another family favorite word, usually meaning don't embarrass Melissa. At 11:30, Carla picked me up because she said people think more clearly when they aren't gripping a steering wheel in anger. You nervous? She asked as we pulled onto the highway. No. She glanced sideways at me. You're lying. Fine, a little. You should be. That actually helped. I was tired of people pretending ugly things weren't ugly. As we drove, Carla reviewed the folder sitting between us. Loan documents, fundraiser screenshots, bank transfers, security camera stills. Nothing exaggerated. Nothing fake. Just truth stacked neatly in plastic sleeves. You don't need to perform today, Carla said. You just need to stay calm longer than your sister. That turned out to be excellent advice. Applebee's was half empty when we arrived. Lunch crowd hadn't fully started yet. A tired-looking hostess led us to a back banquet room with brown carpeting and framed photos of smiling people pretending to enjoy spinach dip. Half my family was already there. Mom sat near the middle, twisting a napkin between her fingers. Melissa sat beside her wearing a cream-colored sweater and an expression like she'd been personally crucified. Uncle Ray nodded awkwardly when I walked in. Aunt Diane avoided eye contact. Tara gave me the tiniest little supportive smile. Then Melissa noticed Carla. Oh my God, she said loudly. You actually brought a lawyer. Carla smiled politely. I usually go where I'm invited. I said no lawyers, Mom snapped at me. No, I said calmly. You requested no lawyers. Melissa folded her arms. Of course Dana needs backup. I pulled out my chair slowly. No, I said. I brought a witness. That landed harder than I expected. Mom looked exhausted. This was supposed to be family. I met her eyes for the first time since Christmas Eve. It was supposed to be family then, too. Nobody spoke for a second after that. A waitress came in asking if we wanted drinks, clearly realizing halfway through the table tension that she had wandered into the wrong room. Coffee orders were placed like hostage negotiations. Once she left, Melissa immediately started talking. Classic Melissa. Get ahead of the narrative before facts arrive. I just want everyone to know she began already emotional that I never wanted any of this. Tara actually coughed into her hand to cover a laugh. Melissa ignored her. I've spent years taking care of Mom while Dana disappears whenever she wants, because apparently military life makes you too important for normal people. I stayed quiet. That seemed to bother her more. She walks in here acting superior because she paid a few bills nobody asked her to pay. Mom nodded slightly. That hurt. Still, even after everything. Melissa continued gaining speed. She humiliated me on Christmas. She's trying to take control of Dad's property, and now she's threatening legal action against her own sister. I folded my hands together on the table. Melissa looked directly at me. You always need to be the hero. Finally, I spoke. Are you finished? For now, she said. I nodded once. Good, because I brought receipts. The room shifted immediately. Not loudly. Just enough. People sat straighter. Carla slid the folder toward me. I opened it carefully. No dramatic gestures, no yelling. I started with the loan paperwork. This is the personal loan Melissa took out in May. I passed copies down the table. My forged signature is on page 3. Melissa scoffed immediately. That's ridiculous, is it? You're seriously accusing me of forgery. I'm stating facts. That looks like your handwriting because sisters write similarly. There was complete silence for one beat. Then Tara muttered, that may be the dumbest thing I've ever heard in a restaurant. Even Uncle Ray snorted into his coffee. Melissa turned bright red. That's not funny. No, I said quietly, it isn't. I moved to the next documents. Mortgage statements. $27,000 in payments, month after month. Mom stared at the papers without touching them. I never told anybody because you asked me not to, I said to her softly. I respected that. Melissa jumped in immediately. Oh, please, you wanted credit. No, I said. You wanted attention. There's a difference. That one hit. I saw it in her face instantly. Melissa leaned forward. You think money makes you better than everybody? I think honesty matters. Then I slid the fundraiser screenshots across the table. That changed the room completely. Nobody spoke at first. Melissa's Facebook page, my military portrait, donation messages, transfer records. Aunt Diane whispered Melissa. It was for family expenses, Melissa snapped. You used my name. I was trying to help Mom. With salon appointments. Melissa's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. You don't understand pressure. And there it was. Pressure. The magical family excuse. Carla finally spoke for the first time. We also have records showing donation funds transferred into Ms. Mercer's personal account. Melissa looked at Mom desperately. Mom, say something. Mom looked pale now. Not angry. Cornered. I reached into the folder one last time and placed a printed security image on the table. Melissa leaving Mom's house carrying a file folder. What were you looking for? I asked quietly. Melissa didn't answer. Mom finally did. The land documents. The room went still. Melissa whipped toward her. Mom? But it was too late. I looked directly at my mother. How much did you know? Mom stared at the table. Mom. Her eyes filled with tears. I knew some of it. Something inside my chest tightened painfully. How much? I didn't know about the fundraiser money. But you knew she forged my signature. Silence. That was my answer. I felt suddenly cold all over. Why, I asked. Mom started crying quietly. Because Melissa is weaker than you. Nobody moved. Nobody even reached for coffee. One sentence. 42 years explained in 7 words. I actually stopped breathing for a second. Not because I was shocked. Because deep down I had always known. Melissa got protected because she fell apart louder. And I got sacrificed because I survived quietly. Aunt Ruth slowly stood up from the end of the table. You didn't raise one weak daughter and one strong daughter, she told Mom. You trained one to carry the other. Melissa exploded. This is insane, you're all attacking me. She grabbed her water glass and threw it toward me. Most of it splashed across the table, soaking napkins and paperwork. The Applebee's manager appeared almost instantly, like she had been waiting nearby for exactly this moment. Ma'am, she said firmly to Melissa, we're done here. Melissa started crying harder. Mom looked shattered. And for the first time in my life, nobody rushed to comfort my sister. I stood up slowly. Not triumphant. Not happy. Just finished. Carla closed the folder calmly. We'll be proceeding formally regarding the forged loan documents and fundraiser misuse, she said. Melissa called me cruel. I looked at her for a long second. Then I said the truest thing I'd said all week. No, Melissa, I just finally stopped volunteering to be your shield. I put on my coat and walked out into the freezing January air. Snowflakes drifted under the parking lot lights. Behind me inside that restaurant, my family was still sitting in the wreckage of truths they had avoided for years. And for the first time in a very long time, I got into my truck without wondering who was angry at me. About 6 months after the Applebee's meeting, I was standing barefoot in my kitchen near Savannah, Georgia, arguing with a leaking faucet, and wondering when exactly my life had become so quiet. Not lonely, just quiet. At first, I didn't trust it. After years of emergencies, guilt calls family drama, and Melissa's ability to turn every gathering into emotional warfare piece felt suspicious. Like something temporary. The house wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, small front porch. About 15 minutes from the water if traffic behaved itself, which in coastal Georgia was always a gamble. But it was mine. Well, mostly mine. The bank technically owned a healthy percentage. Still counted. I had retired from the Army that spring after 20 years in logistics. My knees thanked me before the rest of my body did. Now I worked civilian operations near the port of Savannah. Shipping schedules, freight coordination, supply chain problems, familiar work, less yelling. Most mornings started around 5:30. Coffee, weather report, local news complaining about tourists. Ordinary life. I'd spent so many years waiting for alarms, literal and emotional, that normal routine almost felt unnatural. The family fallout settled slowly. The fundraiser disappeared after records got reviewed. Melissa avoided formal criminal charges, mostly because the donation amounts weren't massive, and several people chose not to push things further once repayments started happening. That part bothered Carla more than it bothered me. She got lucky, Carla said one afternoon over lunch. No, I told her, she got protected, there's a difference. Melissa eventually moved out of Mom's house after the Tennessee property situation collapsed completely. Turns out she had already been talking to developers before even discussing things legally with the family. Classic Melissa. Spend imaginary money before earning real money. The land itself stayed untouched for now. I arranged for a proper estate review and hired a management company near Knoxville to oversee maintenance. Honestly, I think Dad would have laughed at the entire situation. 8 acres of overgrown Tennessee land somehow detonating our family 30 years later. Aunt Ruth and I talked every Sunday after church. Well, after her church. She still believed casseroles could solve 90% of life if applied aggressively enough. One afternoon she said, "You sound lighter." I was sitting on my porch watching rain clouds move over the marsh. Yep. Maybe I'm just sleeping better. No, honey, this is different. She paused. You stopped apologizing for existing. That one stayed with me, because I realized how often I had done exactly that. Sorry I couldn't visit longer. Sorry deployment changed plans. Sorry I worked too much. Sorry I asked questions. Sorry I got upset after being lied to. Sorry. Like my role in the family was to soften myself until everyone else stayed comfortable. A few relatives reached out over the months. Uncle Ray mailed me a handwritten note with a Bass Pro Shops gift card inside because apparently Mercer men believed emotions should always travel disguised as sporting goods. Tara visited in April and brought peach pie from a roadside stand outside Macon. We sat on the porch drinking sweet tea while she looked out toward the trees. You seem peaceful, she said. I think I'm still learning what that feels like. She nodded slowly. Then she asked the question everybody secretly wanted answered. Do you miss them? I knew exactly who she meant. Mom? Melissa? The old version of family? I thought about it carefully before answering. I miss who I thought they were. That was the truth, because grief gets complicated when the people are still alive. Around early November, a letter arrived from Mom. Actual paper. Actual stamp. I almost didn't open it. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for nearly 2 days beside a bowl of oranges before curiosity finally won. Her handwriting looked shakier than I remembered. Donna, I have started this letter 5 times. I don't know how to say what should have been said years ago. I kept expecting you to tolerate things because you always had before. I thought Melissa needed more protection than you did. Somewhere along the way I stopped noticing what that was costing you. I failed you in ways I did not want to see. I am sorry for that. Love, Mom. That was it. No dramatic confession, no movie speech, no sudden transformation. Just honesty. Late, small, real. I sat at my kitchen table rereading it while afternoon sunlight came through the blinds. Then I cried a little. Not because everything was fixed, because it wasn't. Some things never fully heal. But there's relief in finally hearing the truth spoken plainly. I didn't call her right away. That mattered. Old Dana would have rushed to make everyone feel better immediately. This time I let myself breathe first. Boundaries still felt uncomfortable sometimes, like wearing new boots that hadn't softened yet. But they fit better every day. Christmas came again faster than I expected. Georgia Christmases still felt strange to me after Ohio winters. No heavy snow, no frozen sidewalks, just cool air salt breeze and people wearing Santa hats with flip-flops. Christmas morning I sat on my porch wrapped in an old army hoodie holding a mug of coffee while wind moved through the marsh grass. My phone stayed mostly quiet. And honestly, that felt peaceful instead of sad. Around noon a text came through from Aunt Ruth. Merry Christmas, kiddo. Your daddy would be proud of you. I smiled so hard my face hurt. Then I looked out toward the water and realized something that took me 42 years to understand. Revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's refusing to keep sacrificing yourself so other people can stay comfortable. Sometimes it's leaving the table. And sometimes after all the guilt and noise finally fades, you discover how quiet life can be when nobody's demanding pieces of you anymore.